The night was thick with the kind of silence that hides trouble in its breath, and Lexi Harper moved through it like a shadow carrying no fear. Only focus her boots touched the cracked pavement outside the diner, where the ocean smell drifted in. Through the fog, her hair tied back, her eyes reflecting the dull neon light that flickered above the door, a restless glow that made the place look half alive, half dying. She had been here before when she needed quiet, when she wanted to remember how to be ordinary. But tonight the quiet felt wrong, too clean, too still, and her instincts whispered that peace like this never lasts. Inside the diner, the air was warm, heavy with the scent of coffee and old grease, the kind that clings to walls. Like history, the same three regulars sat in the same booth pretending not to watch her as she passed. Because she was the kind of woman people noticed without meaning to, she moved with an ease that spoke of control and something deeper. Something dangerous, the waitress. Mary gave her a tired smile and poured coffee without asking, and Lexi nodded in thanks. Her voice soft when she said she would take the usual. Mary thought she was a night guard or maybe a cop, someone used to long hours and no rest. No one ever guessed the truth, and that was how Lexi liked it. She sat in the far corner where she could see every reflection in the glass, every exit, every angle, her mind, running quiet calculations like a clock that never stops. This habit was not one she could unlearn, not even after leaving the teams, not after the endless drills, the nights of crawling through mud and fire and blood. Now she counted the strangers, the weight of their steps, the tone of their laughter, and she knew, in seconds, which of them were afraid and which were pretending not to be. The door chimed, and three figures entered, the kind that did not belong. The air shifted around them, heavy and sharp. The first one tall and nervous, a hand stuffed deep in his jacket pocket, the second twitching, his jaw grinding invisible thoughts. The third silent eyes scanning corners like he expected danger before he made it. And Lexi knew before they even reached the counter that this was about to turn ugly. She saw how Mary froze, how the regulars went still, and how the tall one's hand came out, showing the dull shape of a gun glinting under the neon haze. Lexi did not move. Not yet. She let the scene unfold like a film she had seen before, over and over. The leader shouting for wallets, phones, the waitress shaking as she dropped the tray, her heart in the air, the gun swinging too wild, too desperate. Lexi's breathing slowed, her pulse steady as stone. She counted distance between them, measured weight, balance, reaction. The numbers spun in her head, but she stayed still, waiting for the right moment, because she knew one mistake would mean chaos. Too fast, too loud, too many lives in the wrong hands. The tall one noticed her last, his voice cracking. As he told her to get up, his weapon trembling. The barrel, a cold shadow, pointed straight at her temple. She did not blink, did not flinch. She met his eyes and saw something there. Not cruelty, but confusion, the kind that comes before panic. She knew. That kind she had seen it in the eyes of men on missions gone wrong. When the line between power and fear blurred into madness, the man's jaw twitched as he shouted again, telling her to stand, or he would do it. But Lexi only tilted her head slightly, and in that tilt was something he could not read, a question or a warning or maybe both. The second man started pacing, muttering about time, saying someone would call the cops, saying they needed to hurry. But the leader just pressed the gun harder, against her head, his hand shaking. Now the other customers frozen in silence, one of them whispering, "Please, please, just give them what they want." Lexi heard it all, but her mind was elsewhere, mapping every motion, every breath of the men, every blink of light off the weapon. She could feel the heat of the gunmetal near her skin, and she knew the next few seconds would decide everything. Mary was crying now, quietly behind the counter, whispering that she had a child at home that she did not want, to die here, and Lexi felt a flicker in her chest. Not fear, but focus sharpened to a single line. She let her eyes drift to the clock above the counter, the second hand ticking like a countdown, and she knew when it hit the 12 she would move. She would act faster than the man could think, faster than he could breathe, because this was what she had been made for, not by choice, but by training, by years of breaking down her humanity and rebuilding it into something that could survive. "The leader," shouted again, the voice cracking as he pushed the gun closer, demanding her phone. Her bag, her name, and Lexi slowly raised her hands. Her voice calm, her words almost too quiet to hear. Saying something that made him hesitate, what she said would stay. Between them, a phrase learned long ago that meant danger in another life, and for a heartbeat he hesitated long enough for her to see the sweat on his neck and the tremor in his jaw. She could end it now, but she waited. She wanted to see how far he would go before the mask broke. Behind her, the bell above the door jingled again, and for a moment everyone turned, thinking maybe someone had come to save them, but no one entered. Only the cold night wind rushing in, carrying the smell of salt. And distance, the leader's eyes darted toward the noise, and in that fraction of distraction, Lexi felt time stretch the way it does before impact, before choice, before revelation. She knew she had 1 second, maybe less, to decide whether to end this quietly or let it unfold into the chaos she had promised herself she would never bring back into her world. The second hand hit 12, and Lexi moved. The gun twisted away from her head, a blur of motion too fast for the eye to follow. The tall man gasped, his finger still on the trigger, but the weapon no longer. His Lexi's body flowed like water, turning, shifting, controlling each angle with precision. Her chair fell backward. The air cracked with noise. Someone screamed. The world tilted into motion again, and in that storm of movement she felt the old rhythm return, the rhythm she had buried, the one she swore she would never need again. The leader's body hit the floor, his weapon gone. His breath stolen, his eyes wide with disbelief. The second man froze. The third reached for something under his coat, but before he could draw it, Lexi was already there, her hand gripping his wrist, her voice low, telling him to stop. But he did not, and in that hesitation, everything changed. The door behind them opened this time for real, and someone stepped inside. The sound of boots on tile, heavy, sure deliberate. Lexi turned her eyes, narrowing, the muscles in her back tensing, because she knew that walk, she knew that weight, and she knew that voice that said softly, "Stand down, Commander Harper." Then silence thick enough to break, and the story was not over yet. The moment that voice cut through the smoke and silence, the air inside the diner shifted again, heavy with recognition and confusion. Lexi froze mid-stance, her breathing sharp. Her gaze locked on the man who had just entered his outline, framed by the cold light outside. He was tall, broad shoulders, wrapped in a dark jacket, face half hidden under a cap. But the way he stood, the way his hand hovered near his side, spoke of discipline, precision, memory. She had known that stance before, on nights darker than this one. On missions that never made it to the news, his name rose in her mind like a ghost from another lifetime. It was Mason Cole. Once her teammate, once her shadow on operations that blurred the line between honor and survival. The last man she had trusted before she left the teams, before everything went silent. She had not seen him in 4 years. But the look in his eyes told her he had never really left her world. He walked closer, his boots slow, deliberate, each step carrying the weight of something unspoken. And when he said her name again, Lexi felt the old instinct tighten in her chest, the instinct that told her to run, to fight, to hide all at once. The robbers lay scattered, two still breathing, one groaning, the gun she had disarmed lying between broken pieces of glass. Mason's eyes flicked over the scene, assessing as if this were still a battlefield. He did not need to ask what happened. He already knew. She moved like a soldier, and the chaos around her told the rest of the story. Mary stood behind the counter, her trembling hands clutching a phone that had never made the call. The regulars pressed against the wall, unable to believe what they had seen. the silence cracked only by the hum of the neon sign that refused to die. Lexi straightened her stance, shoulders drawn back, eyes cold. The part of her that had once belonged to command flickered through. Despite herself, she asked him what he was doing here, but Mason only gave a half smile that never reached his eyes. He said her name again, softer this time, like it meant something more than orders he told her he had been tracking someone and that someone might have just found her. He glanced at the wounded men, said they were small pieces of a bigger storm, coming one that had her name written somewhere deep in it. Lexi felt the weight of his words settle inside. Her bones the kind of weight that came before a mission she never wanted to take. Police sirens started echoing far off, growing closer, the kind of sound that promised questions she did not want to answer. Mason moved to her side, said they needed to leave now, before this turned into paperwork and headlines. She hesitated, her eyes drifting to Mary and the others, their faces pale and lost. She whispered for them to stay quiet, to say nothing about her name or what they had seen, and then she followed Mason out into the cold night, the sound of sirens chasing the wind. Outside, the fog had thickened, the kind that swallowed shapes and erased lines between street and sea. The two of them moved fast down the alley, the old rhythm between them, returning unspoke. She asked again what he was doing here, and this time Mason said something that made her stop. He said the experiment was not over, that someone had reopened the files, the ones that were supposed to stay sealed forever. Her heart tightened because she knew what that meant. The program, the missions, the truth that the world was not supposed to know that there had been more than one of her. They stopped beneath the hum of a streetlight, its flicker like a heartbeat. Mason looked at her, said they needed to get to safety. But Lexi's mind was already somewhere else, tracing back every signal, every contact she had made since she went dark. Trying to see where the breach had come from, she realized too late that this night, this attack in the wood diner was not random, it was a test, and she had failed it by revealing herself. She turned toward Mason, demanding the rest of the truth, but his silence told her enough. There was something he was not saying. They reached his car, a black SUV hidden. In the shadows, he opened the door, told her to get in. But she hesitated because something in his voice had changed too, measured too calm. The way operatives speak when they are following orders, not choices. She stepped back. Eyes narrowing, asked, "Who sent him?" Mason met her gaze but said nothing, and that silence said everything she needed to know. He was not here for rescue, he was here for containment. Lexi's breath slowed her stance, shifting weight, balanced every muscle ready. He said, her name again softer, as if he could still convince her. But the distance between them had already turned into a battlefield. Before either of them could speak, a shot cracked through the fog, the sound tearing the night open. Mason turned his head, instincts taking over as a bullet tore into the metal near his shoulder. He shoved her down behind the car, shouting that they had been followed. Another shot, another spark of metal. Lexi moved without thinking, scanning the direction of the fire, calculating angles, shadows, movement. She saw two figures across the street, too steady to be amateurs. They moved like operators, trained ones, and that meant whoever reopened the program had already set the pieces in motion. Mason cursed under his breath, telling her to move toward the pier. Where the fog was thicker, they darted between cars, glass shattering behind them. Lexi's lungs burned, but her mind was clear. Each motion precise, she could hear the whistle of the next bullet. The rhythm of pursuit. She reached the edge of the docks, the sound of waves crashing like applause for the chaos above them. Mason pulled her behind a stack of crates, his voice low, saying they had to split up. She started to argue, but he cut her off, said it was not her they wanted. It was the data she still carried, the one she had hidden when she walked away, the one no one was supposed to know existed. Lexi froze, realizing what he meant. She had locked that file away years ago, a backup of mission intel, encrypted under a dead alias. If someone was after it, they would destroy everything to find it, and if Mason knew that, then he was part of it too. She asked him one last time who he worked for, but before he could answer, a flash grenade exploded. Nearby, lights swallowing everything in a storm of white heat. Lexi's ears rang, her vision blurred. She felt the air move as someone approached, fast footsteps closing in. She tried to reach for Mason, but he was gone, swallowed by the fog her mind. Fought to stay clear, her instincts screaming that she had seconds before whoever was behind the flash reached her. She pushed up, staggered toward the pier, her hand brushing the cold metal of the railing. The water below dark and endless. She could hear the footsteps behind her, growing louder, faster, closer. She turned slowly, eyes narrowing, breath steady even through the ringing. And then she saw the silhouette stepping out of the smoke. The shape of a woman this time. Tall, confident, her voice cutting through the chaos. Calm, familiar, saying, "Lexi Harper, you should have stayed buried." The sound of the ocean roared around them, but Lexi did not move, her mind spinning as she recognized the voice. The voice of someone she had once trained with, someone who was supposed to be dead, and the night held its breath as the truth began to surface. The road stretched ahead like a dark river cutting through the fog, and Lexi watched the blur of lights as they passed, the silence between her and Mason thicker than the air around them. She could feel the weight of his words pressing into her bones. The people hunting her were the ones who built them, the architects of the program, the ghosts in the system. She asked again what he meant, but his eyes stayed on the road, jaw-tight, shoulders rigid, the kind of posture that hides guilt. He said the project had never ended. It had only changed. Names moved underground, deeper, quieter. They had kept making more of them, not soldiers but replacements, experiments, built from the data taken from the originals, from her, from Tessa, from all of them. Lexi felt her stomach twist. She said they were supposed to shut it down. He said they did on paper only. He had seen the files. He had seen faces that looked like theirs but younger, colder, trained without choice, bred for control, not loyalty. The car hit a bump, the sound of metal rattling. Mason slowed, eyes darting to the mirror. Lexi followed his gaze, headlights behind them, distant but steady, gaining speed. She felt the hum of the engine through the seat and knew before he said it that they were being followed. Mason cursed under his breath, told her to check the glove box. She opened it, found a pistol, small and clean. The serial filed off, she checked. The mag full-loaded, ready. Her pulse steadying into the rhythm of focus. The headlights grew closer. 2 vehicles now, dark SUVs, no markings. She told Mason to take the side road, but he shook his head, said it was too late. She leaned out the window. Gun raised, the cold wind slicing across her face. She aimed for the tires, fired once, twice, sparks flying. The lead SUV swerved, but kept coming, its front grille flashing silver under the passing lights. Mason shouted that she had 3 seconds to think of something before they boxed them in. Lexi glanced ahead, saw the narrow bridge over the channel. The guardrails weak from rust and rain. She told him to hit it fast. No hesitation. Mason hesitated only a heartbeat before pressing down the accelerator. The car shot forward, engine screaming, the SUVs closing in behind the bridge looming ahead. Lexi gripped the dash, counting down the distance, the road narrowing, water raging below. Mason shouted that the bridge would not hold. She said it only had to hold. Once the first SUV rammed their bumper, the car jerked sideways. Lexi fired again, hitting glass, hearing a crack and a scream. The second SUV accelerated, trying to flank. And then Mason turned the wheel hard. Left, the world spun, the sound of tires and metal tearing through air, the edge of the bridge rushing up to meet them. The car tilted, gravity breaking loose. The headlights vanished. The roar of water filled everything. And then silence before the plunge. The plunge came like falling. Through another world, the car smashing through the black surface, the water swallowing sound and light. Lexi's lungs burned as she fought the seatbelt, the cold biting into her skin. Mason's voice lost to the roar. She reached for him, fingers brushing his arm before the current pulled them apart. She kicked upward, fighting the weight of darkness until her hand broke the surface, gasping air that felt like fire, her body trembling but alive. The wreck sank below her, red lights fading like dying stars. She turned in the water, searching, but Mason was gone. Only the bubbles and the ripple of waves remained. She dragged herself toward the shore, each stroke slower, each breath heavier, the city lights distant and cold when she reached land. She collapsed on the rocks, her body shaking, her mind replaying his last words over and over, the people hunting. "You are the ones who built us." Somewhere behind her, engines echoed again, faint but closing. The hunters still tracking the signal. She looked toward the skyline and saw the faint pulse of red, the same glow that marked every hidden base, every ghost site she had ever known. And she understood then that the truth Tessa spoke of was not buried at all. It was awake and moving, and she was part of it whether she wanted or not. She stood, her reflection fractured in the dark water, her breath steadying, her eyes cold. Her voice only a whisper to the wind, saying, "If they built me to be a weapon, then they forgot one thing. Weapons learn to aim themselves." And in the distance, a shadow stepped from the fog, watching her through a scope finger on the trigger as the night held still.